and welcome to Cycling Insights, the podcast brought to you by L'Etape Australia by Tour de France. And Simon Gerrans, it is the Tour de France that we're going to be solely talking about in this episode. I'm in Sydney, ready for my petit départ. You're in Brest, ready for your grand départ. How does it feel being over there?
It's great to be back in France, Matt. I'm really looking forward to the upcoming Tour de France. I think for all the tours we've experienced over the years, this one's lining up to be one of the most exciting. So it's great to be back in France and looking forward to getting started.
Well, it's vastly different to last year. Last year, the event was on at the back end of the season. Now it's in its normal place. Normally in this podcast, we catch up with Amanda Spratt to talk about what's happening on her calendar. We're not doing that in this episode. What I'm going to do with Spratty is I'm going to do a separate podcast with her after the course so we can debrief on what happens there. Fingers crossed that she performs well on the weekend. And after we debrief with her on how she went at the course, we'll then preview the women's Giro d'Italia with her and go into that in depth. So you and I, Gero, we're going to cut to the chase. We're going to go through each of the teams, give our thoughts on what a pass mark would be for them, what we expect from a couple of their key riders. Then we're going to take a look at who we think will win the yellow jersey, who's going to win the green jersey, then take a look at the course, which are the stages that those of us in Australia, unlike you, should sacrifice sleep and stay up for. You ready to do this?
Let's do this. So what team are we going to start with, Matt?
All right, we're going from the bottom to the top. We're starting with the most French team and the only team on the list that consists of just one nationality. It's B&B Hotels, and this is a team that's got Pierre Rolland, perennial rider to get into the breakaway, but sometimes his career is undervalued. He's been a multiple stage winner, mountaintop finishes, but I'm hoping from this team that rather than just getting in breakaways, they win a stage with Brian Coquard.
It would be great to see this team perform in the Tour de France, and it really feels like this is France's own team in the race this year. Like you said, a completely French lineup, and they're going to be extra motivated for these first few days because it's a team from Brittany where the race kicks off. So I think they'll be in the breakaways, and I can really see Brian Coquard doing everything he can to go for that stage win.
Another one of the French teams from this region as well, Arkea Samsung. This is the team that Warren Barguil goes to as a rider that left the Sunweb team after having won a couple of stages at the Tour and the polka dot jersey. They've got Nasser Bouhanni, who let's just see if he can get through without being disqualified in one of the sprints, and Nairo Quintana, who in my view is definitely past his best.
Well, I think this is a team obviously going for stage wins, and I think they've got a couple of good chances in there with Quintana. Most definitely. And why not Barguil in one of the mountain stages to go off the front and go for a breakaway? We've seen him perform at the highest level. So, yeah, I'd really like to see those guys in what is a very international lineup, mixture of French riders, Brits, obviously with Quintana as well being Colombian, very international flavour. And I think they're a good chance for a stage win.
And if Dan McLay does anything, the Kiwis will claim him, like we claim Kiwis, because McLay was born in Wellington. The next one is another one of the French teams, Total Direct Energy. Pierre Latour, he's left AG to Le Mondial. He's their hope for the general classification, but I can't see him doing any better than 20th to 15th if things go well for him.
Yeah, I would say with Pierre Latour, a top 10 would be an outstanding result for him in the Tour de France. They've also got the likes of Edvald Boassenhagen, multiple stage winner in the Tour. So, yeah, I think they're going to play their cards. I expect to see them in a lot of breakaways, really flying the flag for Team Total Direct Energies.
Alpecin Phoenix, and there's one name that jumps off the page that as soon as we walk into the commentary box, Gero, you get excited when Mathieu van der Poel is on the start list. And when we get to the stages previewing, we've got to talk about him as the winner of stages 1 and 2. He's got to be the favourite for those.
The out-and-out favourite for stages 1 and 2. But how far into this race is he going to go? I've heard that he's motivated to perform well in the first few days, try and grab the yellow jersey, and then go home to prepare for the Olympic Games and the mountain bike. So I'm not quite sure how many stages we're going to enjoy watching Mathieu van der Poel for.
They've got plenty of speed on the team as well. They've got Tim Merlier, who was a stage winner at the Giro, Jasper Philipsen, who is super quick, and Sylvain Dillier, who was second at Paris-Roubaix a couple of years ago behind Peter Sagan. It is a strong team. It's not just about the Dutch sensation. Across at Team DSM, which last year was Sunweb, last year they won 3 stages. There's no way they're winning 3 stages this year.
Well, Matt, I think if you had looked at that team before last year's Tour de France, you said there was no way they were going to win 3 stages, and they managed to do that. So why not this year? They've got Soren Krauer Anderson lining up again. They've also obviously got Keith Boll, Tej Benoot. They've got a great lineup of riders and a team that always seems to really gel well together and really rise to the occasion at the Tour de France. So nothing would surprise me from these guys.
Yeah, so there's no way they can win 3 stages, but Case Bowl could win one in a sprint finish, Tish Benoot in an uphill finish, and Soren Krauer Anderson any old-fashioned way, and possibly in the time trial. I can't wait to see what they do. They're always entertaining to watch. This is an interesting one. This is the oldest team in the race, Israel Startup Nation. Their average age is 32 and a half. They have Andre Greipel, Michael Woods, Dan Martin, and Chris Froome.
Well, it may be the oldest team in the race, but it's probably the newest team in the race as well, as far as experience goes and actually lining up in the Tour de France. But I think a lot of emphasis is going to be on Chris Froome at this tour. It's such a phenomenal effort to come back from the horrific injuries that he had a couple of years ago to be back in the Tour de France. For me, their out-and-out leader for the Tour is going to be Michael Woods, and I think he's their best chance of getting a result in this race. So I'd love to see Woodsy up there in the overall. And you know what? I'd love to see Chris Froome getting up the road and sneaking a stage win.
What's a pass mark for Chris Froome?
A pass mark for Chris Froome, in my eyes, a stage win would be an outstanding result for Chris Froome in this tour. But I think he's going to be up against it to be even able to do that in this race. He just hasn't shown signs in the lead up of the Tour de France of being anywhere near a victory. So I think a stage win would be an out and out brilliant result.
For me, a pass mark for Chris Froome is if he plays some sort of role in helping Michael Woods or Dan Martin win a stage. That, for me, is a pass for Chris Froome, given where he's come from in terms of the injuries.
Chris Froome is not a rider you look to, though, to pass on knowledge or help other riders. Chris Froome has set himself a benchmark that has been so high over the years. We have seen this guy winning consistently for so many years now. I don't think a pass is passing on your experience to other riders. He was signed to that team to bring results as the main leader of the team. So I think a pass for him has got to be some kind of result.
All right, we'll see. Watch this space. We'll debrief afterwards in our next edition of the podcast. Intermarché Wanty-Gobert. All I see on that list, Gero, is Jan Barkelants and you taking the jersey off him a few years ago.
Well, what I see in that lineup is breakaway, breakaway, breakaway. This is the one team where when nobody wants to go off the front, they attack. They are happy to sit out the road all day long, even if it's a block headwind, just for the TV time. And that's why they're in the Tour de France. I've actually been in the peloton when there's been no break, and the race organizer will go and chat to their director and say, well, you're here for a reason, guys. Attack. And off they go and really light up the race. So I expect to see a lot more of that from this team.
Yeah, they'll be in everything. Okay, here's a team with the first of our Aussies in the race, Groupama FDG, the quintessential French team. Miles Scottson is on the team. This has been a team that has been a perennial disappointment the last few years because of the hope that's been built up around Thibaut Pinot. He's not in the race, so they're going with Arnaud Démare for the sprints, and I've got huge expectations on David Gaudu in the mountains. I think he can go top 10 overall.
Well, that would be brilliant. And I think if Gaudu can step up to the mark and fill the big shoes left by Thibaut Pinot in that team and really fly the flag for Groupama FDJ in the mountains, that would be great. But look at the lineup that Arnaud Démare has around him for the sprints. So I see Démare there and I see no short of 5 guys that are going to have the firepower to have him up the front in the flat stages. And there are quite a number of flat stages this year as well. So he's going to have a huge number of chances.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the role that Miles Scottson plays. And he could be Australia's new Mark Renshaw to see what sort of a performance he can put in. Next up, it's EF Education Nippo and Rigoberto Urán. Whenever I see Rigoberto at the sign-on, see him on a start list, a smile just comes across my face.
He has a great aura about him, Rigoberto Urán. He has a great aura, but he's also in cracking form. To win the time trial, a tough time trial at the most recent Dauphiné, he's shown he's in great shape. And the team around him, it's a bit of a mixed team. I sort of see guys like Magnus Cort trying to go for a stage win. There's obviously Higuita and Urán that are going to perform in the mountains. I think a great result for these guys is a top 5 in the general classification and a stage win or 2.
And they've got Stefan Bissica. He's super strong in the individual time trial. It was at the Tour de Suisse where Rigoberto picked up that stage victory in the time trial. He finished in second position overall. He's 34 years of age, but he's not showing many signs of slowing down. And they've got other options for a stage win. You wouldn't be surprised if you saw Magnus Cort win a stage, nor Michael Valgren, nor Ruben Guerrero. They have got options. It's a team that often gets underestimated. Next up is the Koenig Quickstep. Where do we start? World champion or Mark Cavendish? Julian Alaphilippe or the Manx missile?
I think their best chances of result in this year's Tour de France are with Julian Alaphilippe. This is probably one of the most controversial lineups in the race. The fact that Sam Bennett didn't make the team and Mark Cavendish was a late inclusion really made headlines in the world cycling press. What a team these guys have for a lead-out train. Matt, I reckon you could win a Tour de France sprint finish on the back of this lead-out train. They have some serious firepower coming into the finish there. So they're going to give Mark Cavendish his best shot of getting another stage win, but they also have a great team for placing Julian Alaphilippe in the front in the dying kilometres of stage 1 and 2.
Do you think Cav will win a stage?
Wouldn't it be a fairy tale for Cav to come back from, the difficult few seasons he has had to win a stage? And I hear he's in great form, but these days I just don't think he has the strength to get through these stages. I can imagine that particularly this tough early few stages in Brittany will really take it out of a rider like Cavendish, and I just don't see him having the strength to be up there and then be able to finish it off with a fast finish. So I can't see Mark winning a stage in this year's Tour.
Stage 3, I think, is his best opportunity. And you talk about Julian Alaphilippe. I think Alaphilippe, along with Van der Poel, is one of the big favourites for stages 1 or 2. That could have the Koenig Quickstep having the yellow jersey in their team. That will take a little bit of horsepower potentially away from the lead-out train for Mark Cavendish. What I do know is Cavendish is going to be a big, big talking point.
I think Cavendish he was signed to that team because he is a big talking point. He has a huge fan base. He's always in the headlines. So I think he probably was signed to De Koenig Quickstep on quite a low salary. But, that low salary justifies itself by just the amount of attention he brings to that team. But now he's back at the Tour de France, I think he would be asking for a bit of a pay rise.
Yeah, and it's well worth it. So across at Lotto Soudal, 2 Aussies on this team. Obviously, Caleb Ewan is the one that's going to get all the attention. He's the man that they'll be aiming for to try and win a stage. But I'm really excited about Harry Sweeney, his first year in the Pro Peloton, making his first appearance at the Tour de France. That's big news for him.
What a fantastic opportunity for Harry Sweeney. Now, I met Harry during the week, this week when I was down in Nice, and he is just so excited about lining up in the Tour de France. He's nervous, but he's excited. But he's surrounded by a really mature group of riders that are there for one sole reason, and that's to help Caleb Ewan win sprint. And I think Harry's bought into that, so he'll learn and develop a heck of a lot as a rider during this tour.
Yeah, and a big reason that he's there is Caleb wants him there. He believes in Harry Sweeney to be part of that lead-out train. One of the teams that they'll have to battle with is Bora Hansgrohe and Peter Sagan aiming for an 8th green jersey. Obviously, he'll start the favourite for that, even though he didn't win it last year. But the winner last year, Sam Bennett, he's not here. For Bora Hansgrohe, what do you see from that team other than Peter Sagan trying to win stages and win green?
Well, they're a team with a couple of very strong climbers. They have Bookman in the team. They have Conrad in the team as well. Wilco Kelderman, I think, a first year in Bora Hansgrohe, he'll be looking to show something in the Tour de France. So this is one of those teams that have really split their team into half of them will be focusing on the sprint with Sagan and half of them will be focusing more on the climbing stages. So it's very difficult for them to do either of those two jobs well without one sole focus in the race.
Yeah, and across at Movistar, speaking of focus, where's their focus? So we've got Valverde at 41. We'll be hoping to repeat what he did in Brest in 2008, win the first stage, take the yellow jersey. Enric Mas, the rising star for the Grand Tours of Spanish cycling. Marc Soler, who keeps putting his hand up and saying, ride for me. And Superman Lopez, who's gone across to that team in the hope of being the sole leader. Who's the leader, Gero?
Matt, the team is the leader because I think they're going to line up and try and win the team's classification, as they do every year. No, this is a really mixed team, and I think a mix of sort of youth and experience. It'd be interesting to see how Lopez has fitted into the lineup as the only non-Spanish rider. But they'll have numbers in the mountains, and I think, whether they really take it to the race and really try and put the big GC favourites under pressure, I doubt. I think they'll be there following, win the teams class, and maybe land one or two of their riders in the top 10.
Yeah, I think Lopez can win one of the mountaintop finishes. The time trial is going to hurt him too much to actually win the race overall, but he can finish inside the top five. Enric Mas can finish inside the top five as well for the team's classification. As you might have watched the Netflix doco, I used to undervalue the team's classification, but as a couple of the riders have said, there's guys that go to the Tour de France for 12 participations and never stand on the podium in Paris. It's a pretty cool achievement for the team and the riders on the squad to be able to do that. Across at the team where you made your first appearance at the Tour de France, AG2R Le Mondial, this year, that team, their best prospect is a guy from WA, Ben O'Connor, and I can't wait to watch him in his first Tour de France.
Ben O'Connor has had such a fantastic and consistent season to date. He has really earned that position as the leader of AG2R Citroën team. I think he'll be up there in all the key mountain stages. He'll make those selections, maybe not when it comes down to 5 or 6 riders, but I think he'll be there. He's a rider who tends to get better and better over 3 weeks. So, I think a great result for Ben O'Connor would be a top 10 in the general classification, and that's not unattainable.
Yeah, I really think he can do it. And I like that we're talking about that team with the reigning Olympic champion, Greg Van Avermaet. And our focus is on Ben O'Connor. And that's not purely through an Aussie bias. It's because Ben O'Connor is their man for the GC. Across at Bahrain Victorious, again, another one of the Aussies, and Jack Haig. I also think that if everything goes right for Jack Haig, he could finish inside the top 10.
I think a top 10 would be a brilliant result, but maybe a little bit beyond Jack Haig. To step in and line up as the leader of Bahrain Victorious, when you've got the likes of Wout Poels around him, Dylan Toons as well, who's a former stage winner, Sonny Colbrelli, he's going to be trying his hand in a sprint. It's a bit of a mixed team. For me, without a big favourite as a leader, I think this is a fantastic opportunity for Jack Haig, and I think he'll really relish that and take a lot away from leading that team. But I can't see him being right up there in the overall. But I think next year he's a guy who will build on the experience of this year and turn up as a real contender.
I'm going to go out on an optimistic limb and say between Ben O'Connor, Jack Haig, and Richie Porte, for the first time ever, we could potentially have 3 Aussies inside the top 10. Go with me here, Gero. Get the glass half full.
We're going for an Aussie teams class, are we?
Yeah. All right. Also from that team, Sonny Colbrelli. I think he's the dark horse for the green jersey, but we'll get to that in a moment. Next up, Bike Exchange. The Aussies on that team, Lucas Hamilton making his first appearance in the race, Luke Durbridge, brilliant worker as always, and Michael Matthews, former winner of the green jersey. But they've got Simon Yates, they've got Esteban Chavez, both contenders to win stages when it comes to the high mountains. I'm not sure what to expect for Bike Exchange, so I'm going to put it to you. What's a pass mark for Bike Exchange?
A pass mark for Bike Exchange in this Tour de France is a stage win. I don't think they have the firepower to compete with the big GC teams for the overall title or even a podium. And they've reverted back to what the foundations of how the team started was chasing stage wins in the Tour de France, not going for it overall. Because you look at this lineup, they have a couple of guys there for the sprints, they have a couple of guys for the flats, and they have a couple of sort of guys for the mountain. So it's a bit of a mixed bag of a team. And I think a staging would definitely be a big pass.
Okay. Then across at Team Quebecer Assos, one Aussie on that team, Simon Clark. They've got a mixed bag of riders that I assume are going to be looking for breakaways. I'm not sure. Victor Campenaerts, perhaps. He was brilliant at the Giro d'Italia. Has he been able to recover from that? Can he win a stage from a breakaway? They've got Nick Dlamini. I'm looking forward to seeing him make his first appearance in the Tour. I'm not sure what they're going to deliver.
Yes, for me, this is a team of breakaway specialists in the Tour de France. Gogol is often a guy who features in the breakaways. He's quite strong when he gets up the road. Simon Clark, I think he'll be taking his opportunities to try to get up the road and win a stage or maybe one of the transition stages. But yeah, it's a real mixed team, and I think they'll just try and fly the flag for Quebecer Assos whenever they can in any breakaway.
All right, breakaways, again, in my view, Trek Segafredo. Sure, they've got a former winner, Vincenzo Nibali. They've got Balkan Mollema, who's been a stage winner before, a podium at the Volta de España. Jesper Sturven, Edward Toynes, Kenny Allison, Julien Bernard. This is a team, in my opinion, that will also be in the breakaway on those days that are medium mountain stages, where it's actually difficult to get into the breakaway. And I think they can pick up some stages.
This is a great team, a very well-rounded team, but probably a team without a clear leader or a clear favourite, both in the mountains and on the flats. When you look at half the team is really climbing specialists, when you look at Alisson, Mollema, Nibali, Bernard, and then you got the guys for the flats and some really strong Belgian guys in there in Sturvens and Toynes. Also, Skuyens is quite recently a national champion, and Mads Pedersen, the former world champion. So they've got some strength on the flat. I'd love to see those guys really throw it down the gutter at the end of the stage in the crosswind, maybe teaming up with De Koning Quickstep or something like that, just to really spice the race up. For me, their best chance of a stage win is probably Mads Pedersen.
Yep. Okay. Speaking of stage wins, it's been a dry spell since 2008. Cofidis, can they win one, and where does it come from?
I'd love to see a Cofidis stage win come from Guillaume Martin. He showed so much in last year's Tour de France. He was fighting there, and he was just caught out on a number of occasions, out of position, probably not with the team support that he needed to be right up the front. So if he can sneak off the front in the final few kilometres in one of these mountain stages, maybe after he's already dropped a little bit of time, I would love to see that for Team Cofidis.
And what bottle of champagne will team management be drinking if they do win a stage?
It's probably not what bottle, is how many bottles. I think they would celebrate very hard with Cedric Vasseur there leading that team if they win a stage in the Tour de France.
That will be huge. Okay, we've got 4 more teams to go. Astana Premier Tech, and again, this is a team that I don't think they can really challenge for the overall classification with Jakob Fuglsang. They've got Alex Aramburu, who could be good in the first couple of stages, uphill sprint finishes. Alexei Lutsenko, he'll be on the hunt for stage wins as well. It's Yoni Zagira in there. This is a team that is super strong, but I don't think they can challenge for yellow.
I don't think they'll challenge for yellow either, Matt, but you're right. It is a super strong team with some very exciting riders in there. I'm a big fan of Lutsenko. The way he races is aggressive. He's strong. He can climb. He's tactically very good. Also in there, Jakob Fuglsang, who's just a consistent performer on the GC. He seems to struggle a little bit over 3 weeks versus the sort of one-week races like the Dauphiné, which he's won in the past. And I'm not sure if he is just a bit bigger, a bit heavier set, which maybe sort of plays to his disadvantage over the course of 3 weeks. But a very strong team. I expect him to be very active.
Okay, 3 teams to go. The next one is another one of your former teams. I'm asking the questions. You're giving the answers because I've got no idea what's going to happen here. Carapaz, former winner of the Giro. Tao Gegenhardt, last year's winner of the Giro. Geraint Thomas, former winner of the Tour de France. Richie Porte, third last year at the Tour de France. Who is their best chance to win the Tour this year?
Their best chance of winning this Tour is with Geraint Thomas, in my opinion. With near 50 kilometres of flattish time trials, I think Geraint Thomas is the best place to capitalise on those within that team. Tao Gegenhardt may be a former winner of the Giro, but this is his first experience at the Tour de France. The Tour de France is a whole new ballgame for these guys. I can see Carapaz really throwing caution and maybe team orders to the wind to try and get up the road and try and get some time in the mountains. And Richie Porte, I think Richie Porte has got the condition to be up there for a podium finish again. I feel he's probably in better shape than what he was last year. But Richie Porte was signed to that team to be a domestique, to be that loyal worker in the mountains. That's a role that he really loves, and I think that's a role he'll revert back to in this race.
Yeah, I think he will. And I agree with your theory on Geraint Thomas in terms of the time trialing. And I don't know what to expect from Richard Carapaz. And I'm not sure what's going to happen in terms of following those team instructions or whether he does his own thing. He's on the back of winning the Tour de Suisse. I can't wait. It could be the new Movistar. Will they be able to keep the team unity? Can't wait. I don't know what's going to happen there. Okay, 2 to go. Last year's second place finishers. Jumbo-Visma. They had the yellow jersey for the lion's share of the race. Primož Roglic, he didn't lose the jersey on that last time trial. It was taken off him. But what did they learn from last year, and can he win it this year?
I think he's obviously one of the big favourites to win this year's race. I think Team Jumbo-Visma would have taken a huge amount of experience away from last year's Tour de France. And in my opinion, they raced so well last year. They nearly did everything right. They were just beaten by a better bike rider in a time trial that they could do nothing about. But, Roglic is obviously the clear favourite. Wout van Aert, I think he could win the green jersey as a big threat to Peter Sagan if he gets the liberty to go for these sprint stages as he was doing last year, and as long as he doesn't have to spend too much time on the front for Primoz Roglic. So this is probably one of the strongest teams in the race, and with one clear GC leader rather than 3 or 4.
What I love about it is we really don't know where Primoz Roglic is at. His last race was at the end of April at Liège-Bastogne-Liège. So clearly he's been training the house down, and we're going to find out pretty soon how good his form is. And rest assured, with a guy like that, he's going to turn up and he's going to be ready to go. There's no question.
Well, I think even if he's a little bit down on intensity, these first few days in Brittany, these punchy little climbs, this aggressive racing, is going to bring that intensity level back up to what he needs for the back end of the race. And I wonder whether himself and maybe Tadej Pogačar came into this race a little bit underdone, or coming into this a little bit underdone with the Olympic Games in the back of their mind, thinking if they come in a bit fresher, maybe they'll finish the Tour fresher with a pretty important goal in Tokyo only a week after the Tour de France.
Okay, which brings us to our final team. UAE Team Emirates, the defending champion, Tadej Pogačar, who's ridden the Tour of Slovenia recently, the national championships. Prior to that, his last race was Liège-Bastogne-Liège, which he won. The big difference this year is he's not going in as a dark horse, as one of the underdogs. He's going in as the defending champion. He's got a much stronger team around him. But one of the things that I'm really looking forward to seeing is how does Rui Costa and Mark Hirschi go as domestiques?
Yes, I'm not sure whether he does have so much of a stronger team around him than what he lined up in last year's race. Actually, when you look at that team, you can say who is still going to be there with him when Team Jumbo-Visma or Ineos Grenadiers have whittled the bunch down to sort of 10 or 12 riders. Is he going to have anyone left with him at that point? He might be solo. But in saying that, he was in a similar situation last year, and he managed to surprise us all by winning the race. I'm looking forward to seeing how Mark Hirschi races. He was such an exciting rider in the 2020 Tour de France. He attacked day in, day out until he finally got his breakaway. Are they going to put a leash on him and hold him back to support Tadej Pogačar, or are they going to let him do his race again?
Okay, I can't wait to see it all unfold. And UAE Emirates, can they wait until that second last day in the final time trial for Pogačar to take the yellow jersey? In a moment, we're going to give our top 3 for the podium, and we're going to give our favourite for the green jersey, plus our dark horse. Cycling Insights brought to you by L'Etape Australia by Tour de France. L'Etape Australia is the only Tour de France event in Australia and provides riders of all levels with the thrill of riding on fully closed roads, just like at the Tour. I've been part of the event since 2016, and it's always the highlight of my season, just after the Tour itself, of course. Join me in Kiama in November to experience the Tour de France atmosphere right here in Australia. For more information, visit letapeaustralia.com. It's LETAPE Australia.com. Okay, Gero, it's time to put your reputation on the line. I think we should start with the green jersey first and then the yellow jersey. So who's going to win green and who's your dark horse or your second favourite?
I think Peter Sagan is going to line up and win a record 8th green jersey in this race. And a dark horse, Wout van Aert, is going to challenge him all the way to Paris. And I don't think he's a dark horse. Everyone's looking at Wout van Aert because he's a guy that is so complete as a bike rider. But Peter Sagan is there with one sole focus. He doesn't have to think about anyone else in his team. He's just thinking about breaking records.
Okay, so you've gone with a guy who's been a multiple world champion in cyclocross. He's the current Belgium national champion. He's won a stage last year and you're calling him a dark horse. He's not a dark horse. I'm with you on Peter Sagan as the favourite to win the green jersey, but I'm going for a proper dark horse. Sonny Colbrelli for green. Get on board.
How is Sonny Colbrelli a dark horse? He was the most consistent guy in the sprint finishes at the Dauphiné.
Oh, here we go.
He won stages. He won the bunch sprint in nearly every day when there wasn't a break up the road. If you were to say the Dauphiné is a pure form indicator for the Tour de France, you would say he was a red hot favourite.
Gero, don't give the secrets away. This is Cycling Insights. We're hoping that people listening haven't watched the Dauphiné and Sonny Colbrelli makes me look like a genius. He's my dark horse. Go with me.
Okay. He hasn't won a Tour de France stage before. He hasn't been up there in Paris. So, yeah, okay. Let's go with him as a dark horse.
He's my dark horse. Okay, the yellow jersey, and we're not just going with yellow. Top 3 overall. Should I go first this time, given that you went the green jersey first?
Sure. Go for it.
Okay. Roglic, Pogačar, Carapaz. I'm going against your advice on Ineos. I think that Carapaz will go against the advice from the sports directors. He's going to go rogue, taking the playbook from Movistar, and Carapaz is going to be the number one man through his own initiative at Ineos, and he's going to make the podium.
Oh, you love a bit of controversy, Matt. My podium. Here we go. I'm going to go. I agree with you. Roglic is going to take the overall title. I put second place in Geraint Thomas and third in Tadej Pogačar.
Oh, okay. I like it. Not often that the defending champion doesn't get listed as the favourite. I went with him last year as my smoky, and I was patting myself on the back for the next 6 months. All right, so let's take a quick whip through the stages to take a look at the ones that we really need to stay up for. Obviously, stage 1, you've got to stay up for stage 1. It's through Brittany, a region that you know well, littered with climbs, a 3-kilometre uphill finish, maybe a little bit tough for the pure sprinters. Mathieu van der Poel, Wout van Aert, they're jumping off the page along with Julian Alaphilippe. And the following day, the Mur de Bretagne, where Cadel won in 2011. This is the sort of territory that you loved as well.
Yeah, I don't think you can go past Mathieu van der Poel for stage 1, and this is a stage that you cannot miss. Stage 2 up the Mur de Bretagne, I think that suits more Julian Alaphilippe. It's tough up the Mur de Bretagne. We saw Cadel Evans win a stage at the Mur de Bretagne in the Tour de France that he took the overall title. So a couple of very exciting stages to start with no shorter than 12 categorised climbs, which is nearly unheard of in the Tour for the first few days.
Both stages 3 and 4, they do suit the sprinters, but stage 3 is a little lumpy towards the end. Plenty of narrow roads going towards the finish line. But I think that for a guy like Caleb Ewan, if it's technical down towards the finish, it'll be guys like Caleb, Mark Cavendish for both stages 3 and 4 that we'll see lining up as the favourites.
Couldn't agree with you more. I think Caleb Ewan will be rubbing his hands together when he thinks of these couple of stages. He's been racing well this year. He's obviously got a lot of confidence in his lead out team. Lotto Soudal have a lot of confidence in him. They're giving him more and more support. So I think they'll commit 100% to stages 3 and 4 for Caleb.
Yeah, and obviously Sonny Colbrelli will be in the top 3 in both of those stages on his way to taking the green jersey to Paris, correct?
Yep, okay.
Okay, stage 5 is the first of the individual time trials, 27.2 kilometres. And it's always hard from this side of the world to really take everything from the race handbook. It looks lumpy on the race handbook, but like the altitude gain, it varies from 50 metres above sea level up to 104 metres above sea level. But that doesn't look like there's any really flat road. So it's going to be pretty tricky to get a rhythm, which actually suits a guy like Richie Porte in the individual time trial.
Yeah, the roads around this area of France are quite grippy. So they're a heavy tarmac. So they're sort of a grueling sort of parkour. And like you said, there's no big climbs in this time trial, but it's not flat either. So it is a difficult time trial. And, this is our first real indication of where we see the GC favourites placed. Maybe who's coming a little bit too underdone or who hasn't really got their preparation for the Tour right.
And we'll see whether Carapaz can get himself in a position of leadership at Ineos to reach that podium in Paris. We'll find out soon enough. Okay, stage 6 into Châteauroux. This is where Mark Cavendish won his first stage in 2008. If he could pick one stage to win other than Paris, I reckon this is the stage that Cavendish wants the most.
I'm glad you said other than Paris because I think it's a big goal of Mark Cavendish to make it to Paris. So he's going to have his eye on the stage win there. But yeah, definitely a stage win to Châteauroux would be great for Cavendish. And you look at the parkour here. This is probably nearly the flattest day in the Tour, again with the exception of Paris. So this is the one that he'll be targeting.
And the following stage 7, it's on a Friday. It is almost 250 kilometres to La Creusot. This stage, Gero, this is going to be a commentator's challenge for the first 150 kilometres. And if you're watching this at home, this might be the stage where you make sure that you've just got something up your sleeve to watch early on in the stage. A break will go early, nothing will happen for about 3 hours, but the last couple of hours of racing could be really good because there's quite a few climbs.
This will be an interesting stage because it'll be interesting to see who controls a stage like this, because this is a stage finish that suits the punchier type riders. So the teams like even Alpecin, Phoenix, they will potentially try and bring a breakaway back for these closing kilometres for Mathieu van der Poel. It's probably a little bit too hard for the pure sprinters to get to the finish there. Maybe Caleb could get to the end of a stage like this if the finish is reasonably controlled. But yeah, the back end of this stage is really interesting. So from all our listeners in Australia, I'd say set an alarm to go off with about 80 kilometres to go to the final couple of hours.
Yeah. And then get ready for a big night on Saturday, because Saturday night the stage goes to Le Grand Bornand. It's 150 kilometres, and these are the sorts of distances that I really like because they make for aggressive racing. 3 Category 1 climbs towards the back end of the stage. The final one is the Col de la Colombière. This is a proper day of racing, and I can't wait for that stage already.
Now, this is going to hurt the riders' legs. As you said, it's stage 8, so they've got a week of racing in their legs already. And they start out with a 5 kilometre climb straight out of the blocks at an average of 6.6%. So this is a stage that the breakaway and the climbing specialists are going to be really going for. The entire peloton are going to be on the rollers or the home trainers warming up for this stage start.
The home trainers out the front of the buses. Stage 9 on the Sunday. This goes to Tignes. This is the stage, the finish line that was cancelled in 2019 because of the landslide. So the race organisers have worked out to get back there, having that village, that ski resort, not able to host the stage finish back in 2019. Another stage of 145 Ks effectively. This leads into then the first rest day. So big mountaintop finish with the first rest day the following day. I'm expecting fireworks.
There will be absolutely fireworks on this stage. I think ultimately probably more on the final climb up to Tim. We're going to see some early attacks on that climb. There'll be some guys that are maybe trying to make up for a little bit of lost time, lost in the race to this point. But, up until the final climb, all these climbs are actually fairly regular in gradient. There's nothing too steep in there. So they're kind of tempo climbs where for a breakaway to succeed on a day like this, it'll have to be a breakaway in numbers. But I anticipate it seeing all come back together for a fantastic finish in 10.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the yellow jersey group fighting for the stage victory there. It's then the rest day. It's then a day of transition to Valence. It's an opportunity for the breakaway maybe, but the sprinters will want to make the most of it before it's back into the mountains on the Wednesday. They go over the top of Mont Ventoux and then descend back down to the finish line. Now, that could be a risky descent.
Well, this is going to be a great stage because they climb Mont Ventoux not once but twice in different directions. As you can see, they summit Mont Ventoux there about mid-stage. They descend and they turn around and they go back up it again before a descent down to the finish. So I imagine there'll be a huge number of riders wishing they could drop into that super touch position to get to the finish on this stage. They're not allowed to do that now, so it's all going to come down to the climb.
Stage 12 into the old Roman town of Nîmes, an opportunity for the sprinters. Stage 13, Carcassonne, another chance for the sprinters. It's then on to stage 14. That looks like a day for the breakaway, medium mountain stage, rolling the whole way through before we then go to stage 15 on the Sunday into Andorra, an area that you know really well, and this is packed full of climbs. This is a big day in the mountains.
This stage into Andorra, or this finish in Andorra, is really tough. There's a couple of really long climbs there heading into you enter into Andorra. It's a fast, long descent down the valley until you turn left onto the Col de Bachalis, or turn right on the Col de Bachalis, and that is a super short, very, very steep climb. And there'll be fireworks with the GC guys here. It won't matter what's going on the breakaway. There'll be plenty of attacks from the bunch. After they summit that final climb, it's dropping back down to the city centre to finish this stage. So this is going to be one to watch.
Yeah, I haven't seen a boring stage into Andorra, whether it's been in the Volta a España or the Tour de France. It's always been an entertaining stage. After that, it's then the second of the rest days. Stage 16 on the Tuesday is a day that's got a Category 1 climb and it's got a few other bits of climb, and I think that could really be a day for the breakaways. They leave Andorra, make their way back into France. It's then stage 17 for a mountaintop finish on the Col de Porte. And there's limited mountaintop finishes in this year's race, but these are two back-to-back, stage 17 to the Col de Porte and then stage 18 onto one of the most famous of them all, Les Ardennes. These two stages coming back-to-back, they are a brutal couple of days of racing.
Yeah, to have stage 17 and stage 18 both with summer finishes, this is the last chance for one of your favourites, Richard Carapaz, to try and claw back a bit of time and trying to get a bit of advantage before this final time trial. But these are going to be exciting stage finishes. So there's definitely going to be a bit of fatigue, Tour de France fatigue by the time you get to this point. But it's definitely worth the gain watching stage 17 and 18.
The following stage, stage 19, sort of stage that perhaps you could just watch the highlights package. I don't think a lot's going to happen there. Maybe the teams of the sprinters could have enough left in the tank to be able to bring it back together. Then stage 20, the final individual time trial. It's similar sort of terrain to the first one, 30.8 kilometres. This is where the last decisions will be made, one day before Paris.
This is where the final shake-up of GC could happen, but it is very difficult to make up time on the general classification in flat time trials like this. If riders are on a bad day, they don't lose huge blocks of time. They lose, seconds rather than minutes, versus how we saw the final time trial in last year's tour. So unless the GC is still very tight by this point, it'll be difficult to see too many changes happening in this time trial.
And then it's into Paris. So take us back to 2005, your first season in the Pro Peloton, your first tour, arriving in Paris.
Well, there's no sensation like arriving on the Champs-Élysées to complete your first Tour de France. As you turn onto the around the Place de Concorde and onto the Champs for the very first time when you take the first lap, you get goosebumps all over your body. The roar of the crowd, the feeling of finally getting to Paris, there's nothing quite like it. Unfortunately, without the crowds on the side of the road at the Tour de France last year, I don't think the riders quite had that same experience. I'm not sure what the crowd situation is going to be like by the time we get to Paris this time around. Nevertheless, it'll be a very special feeling for these guys.
And what's it like at the end of a tour when it's been a tour where you've had great success? Like, the year where you won a stage, won the team time trial, and had a stint in the yellow jersey. What's it like on an occasion such as that when you make it into Paris?
Well, you're either looking to get to Paris to celebrate, or you're looking to get to Paris as a sense of relief that it's all over. If you've had a tough Tour de France, you've just been battling, particularly in the third week of the race, it is such a huge relief to get to the final stage. If you've had a really successful tour and you just want to enjoy the moment, you can finally sort of drop your guard, let your hair down a little bit, and celebrate properly. The night in Paris is the one to do that.
Yeah, what an amazing accomplishment it must be. I can't wait for the race to get started on Saturday. There's always plenty to look forward to. There's going to be unexpected stories to be told. But I think for the rest of the world, the rider that is going to catch their attention is going to be Ben O'Connor. And I'm looking forward to the non-Aussie that we don't know a lot about yet that catches our attention. And we don't know who that's going to be yet. Like it was Mark Hershey last year.
Well, the beauty of the Tour de France is, expect the unexpected. There's always someone who pops up and does a fantastic result and inspires a new generation of cyclists. And then there's the good old battles that happen between the big GC favourites as well, and the fast guys too. So it's going to be a great tour. I'm really looking forward to it. I can't believe it's upon us already again. And what a great 3 weeks we have to look forward to.
All right, Garrett, you enjoy it over there. I'll enjoy it over here. And eventually I'll see you in Kiama for L'Etape Australia by Tour de France. Thanks for listening to Cycling Insights, L'Etape Australia by Tour de France podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to us. Leave us a review and recommend us to your friends. It really does make a big difference for the podcast. See you on the road.